And away we go.
Right. So, what is in the news today?
Well, that is a good question. We don't know what to do today, but we'll get somewhere with that.
Yeah, we'll definitely get somewhere. But definitely there has to be something in the news today. Otherwise, we would not be making this episode. But, despite that, yeah, let's start from square one, I suppose.
Yes. Okay. TikTok Short.
Top,
Yes, there's this newsletter called Charter where it gives you like data and charts in a storytelling kind of format that it tells a story through diagrams, data, and infographics. And one of them reads TikTok US is worth only $14 billion, according to the Trump backed deal.
14 billion is still good. It's still a great amount. Only. I'll be honest. When you said TikTok shot, I thought you literally meant TikTok got shot, or like a TikToker got shot, or something. I don't know.
No,
Ah,
that'd be awful.
yeah, no, yeah, definitely what I was about to say. But only 14 billion, huh? With the whole
Oh,
deal that
yes.
with the whole deal that Trump is trying to do, huh?
Yep. He's still going through with it.
Well, that's Trump. I do wonder why does he want TikTok? I mean, other than the fact that it helped him win the election, why does he want TikTok specifically?
The thing is, he doesn't care too much about TikTok as an app. His concern is TikTok's operations being majority under the ownership of its parent company ByteDance, which is based in China. Even though there are American owners that have shares in ByteDance and or TikTok, Trump is still saying that we don't want any foreign adversaries or any foreign investors and or companies and organizations to have any ownership of TikTok because by the logic that anything that's not American having ownership of any platform, business, or organization is considered a threat to national security.
Well, he's the only one who seems to care about that. No one else cares. Literally, no one else cares at all. Because most people just want to be on TikTok. I mean, if they did care, then just don't have the app on your phone. But most people just seem to not care. Most people just seem like they want to scroll on TikTok, and that's about it. I think Trump is the only one who cares about it being a threat. I don't know. Maybe his supporters will probably be behind him, but ultimately speaking, we all know what they're gonna do. They're gonna go on TikTok right after that rally or record that rally on TikTok. But I get what Trump is saying. He just wants to do what's best for the country. But China's not budget. I do wonder, like, what's this China want? More money, or are they never really gonna sell this app to them? 'Cause I don't know, it's like after a couple of attempts, I feel like you should just give up or something. I don't know, either allow TikTok to remain in the United States, or just you know ban it completely. I
Well,
mean, there's really not much you can do.
well, that's true. There's not much he can do now, but that does not mean the deal isn't going to be finalized. And it also does not mean that there isn't going to be an alternative US equivalent of TikTok that will only be made available to US users. And having those US TikTok users being isolated and be separated from the main TikTok platform and its algorithms. Just like with Douyin, which is the Chinese equivalent of TikTok that only serves to users in China, as to make sure that Chinese users aren't mixed in with other users around the world. I think what this deal is that Trump is trying to put up with, or trying to get through the door, is it's kind of the same thing. And once that is finalized, well, even though it's going to be the case that TikTok, as it is now, isn't going to be available to United States users, that does not mean that Americans in the US aren't going to be isolated from the world around us. You know, there are other apps that exist. where you can still connect with people from around the world. Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, Neptune, Red Note. Did I mention Neptune? And maybe this project they're working on at the moment, but we gotta wait a couple months, maybe another year or two until, well, something beyond the drawing boards starts to finalize. But yeah, that there are other apps out there which people can use not just to watch content they like, but to also connect and get an understanding and look at what the world is like today. So if the case of this deal is to separate people in the US from the rest of the world in terms of getting their information, it is redundant and very moronic because there's still going to be platforms, there's still going to be social media apps that is going to be used by billions of users worldwide.
So that's a really good point. A lot of people are yeah, there is definitely like more options out there than like TikTok. But the real question is, will those alternative options will those alternative options get as much traction as TikTok? No. The answer is no. Taking on track. Yeah, it'll get traction, but it won't get as much like attention as TikTok. I don't know. The one thing about TikTok is that it's very versatile. There's a bunch of different people on there with different cultures. You can learn a lot of it. Meanwhile, I mean, and I understand making an app for specifically the United States. But I question if people would be interested in only seeing people from the United States. There are people who want to explore different cultures, especially when they're not able to travel to those different places to explore those different cultures. I mean, with the U.S. culture, it's I don't know. I feel like it's not always the same. It depends on where you live, obviously, but it's more or less the same, and people would like to like something different.
Yes.
But I don't know. I'm just saying, based on from a TikTok from attention grasping perspective, people want to see a lot of different things, funny things, interesting things, smart things, intriguing things. And people want to see a lot of different perspectives and a lot of different worldviews. But I don't know. I think for the most part, I can probably see I don't know. I think the only people who would probably benefit from it, I don't know, girls or something. But I don't know. They probably wouldn't benefit either. But I really don't. But yeah, most people. I mean, hey, never say never though. I mean, if they make a U.S. only app, then that's cool and all. That's cool. I just hope that they're successful enough to keep people on the app. Because they need to come up with different trends for people to do. They need to come up with this and that, etc., 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 so that people can remain on the app and not just delete it after a month. You know, it can't be another. And also another thing too. They should not hire people to be on the app. Just to promote it. They should not hire people to. Okay, you know what? Fine. Maybe they should hire some people, but not so much so as you know what? Actually, okay, they should probably pay some people to at least to promote the app. Actually, yeah, no, promote the app. They don't necessarily have to be on the app, but just pay the people to promote the app. And that's about it. Don't pay them to be on the app and then just leave.
Yeah, it
That's
sounds
all.
familiar for some reason.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely sounds all too familiar. It's yeah. Now, paying for people to promote your app, I have no problem with it because it's look, how else is your app supposed to get out there? How else is your business supposed to get out there? Obviously, you should run ads too for your app or for your business. But other than that, man, it's don't pay people to go on the app because it's ultimately those people are just gonna go back to Instagram, TikTok. Do celebrities still use Snapchat? I know people still use Snapchat. Do celebrities still use Snapchat for behind me?
I think the only people I can recall that would likely use Snapchat are preteens and teenagers, maybe a couple of college kids, But by that point, they're just going to switch over to Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, all the other big platforms. And
Yeah, you're
the reason
probably
I say this is because when I do look at content on Snapchat, just out of curiosity, most of the content in terms of its vibe, energy, and just the visuals, they're firstly, the visuals are very colorful. And secondly, when I scroll down Spotlight, a lot of the videos I get recommended are there's just some, you know what, I'm going to be blunt about this. They're straight up trash. The videos I saw, the content I see on Snapchat, it's just garbage. Something you might see on YouTube Kids, but even then, YouTube Kids would be much better, the content they promote there, rather than what you would see on Snapchat. And that is saying something.
that bad on Snapchat.
Yes.
I'll be honest. I've been on Snapchat for about 2 years, and because I'll be honest, I had the like the app for the wrong reason. So I just said, I'm just gonna because like I really wasn't actually using it, and plus I knew I had it for like the wrong thing. Like, I'm like, yeah, but like, I didn't know Snapchat was that bad. And also, yeah, I would say like as an adult, I don't think you should really put that much emphasis on Snapchat. I would say like if you're like a grown man or a grown woman who has Snapchat, you only let's face it, you only have Snapchat for one and one reason only. We both
What
know
would
that
that
reason.
be?
Okay, that reason would simply be to text like men, multiple women, multiple men. Just I'm just gonna flat out say it, texting. You have the like if you're a grown person who has Snapchat, you only have it for that reason. Like you're not gonna send streaks to people. You're like that's what teenagers do. That's what like kids do. You're really on there just to text people. You're on there to send like nude photos and look, man. I'm just gonna say like most people have done that. Most people have done that in their lives. I'm not condemning anybody. You shouldn't do it, but I'm gonna say you shouldn't do it, but I'm not gonna condemn you or judge you for that. But I am saying though, like that's the only reason why, like a 25 to 30 something year old person would have Snapchat. Even a 40 something year old person would have Snapchat to set, to just talk inappropriately, even maybe potentially meet in person. But just to mainly just send inappropriate photos and just sex random people. Like,
That's probably the reason why, at least the function on Snapchat that is primarily responsible for such people to do such actions, was one of the reasons why Snapchat became so big that it did during the late 2010s. Because Snapchat did something that not many messaging platforms, not just social media, but messaging platforms did not have, which was messages that could disappear in 24 hours or less, maybe 48, less than 48 hours. But that was a very unique selling point for Snapchat back then. But now that a lot of platforms where you can message people are implementing said feature, what edge does Snapchat have?
true. That's what reading now. It's like, yeah, no, when they first came out, that was a unique feature. That was a great idea. But then, like, other apps have arrived, have rose from the ashes, have implemented that idea. Snapchat's not really unique. I mean, Snapchat also had their map as well, don't they? They still have that, I think, right?
Yeah, they still have Snap Maps where you can look at where people are in real time, and yeah. But when
Yeah,
they
I
first
think,
introduced it, I think we had the discussion when Instagram also introduced that feature. Everyone was going wild. But whilst
yeah,
everyone's going mad about what Instagram did with the live maps, I didn't hear the same reaction when Snapchat did that same when they introduced Snap Maps years ago. And that
I
was
don't know.
just I don't know either.
I'm gonna give people the benefit of the doubt say because they already deal with that. So it's like they're kind of outraged now. I'm not gonna say like I'm not gonna say like there is a reason why people didn't didn't say anything about it in the early 2010s or like whenever Snap Map came out. Maybe because people actually thought it was cool, but like because they've been on Snapchat or heard about like certain stories about on Snapchat. Yeah, like they're probably freaking out about it now. So like I'll be honest, I know like we live in a world where people complain a lot, but I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt when it comes to that because it's like yeah, like they're like oh man, we've been through this already, man. Like Instamat is like this isn't a good idea. Yeah, it's like bro, I don't want you to know where I'm at, but at the same time, I don't think that feature is available for me on at least on my main Instagram account. On my other Instagram account, like the Struggle for Christ one, it's available, but it's off. I don't want, like I said, I don't want anyone to know where I'm at. It's like, bro, why would I want that to happen? But yeah, like I would say, like Instamaps is like a pretty good idea as long as maybe like when it comes to like you're a specific group of people who follow you, you can let them know where you're at, but not the whole world though, because that's just dangerous. That's dangerous in itself. I mean, I wouldn't want anyone to just know where I'm at. I mean, I could be out with my friends, and then it's like it's like God forbid, it's like I have like I have enemies out there, and if, even I'm at a restaurant with my friends or with my wife or with my girlfriend, with my girlfriend's dog, or with my friend, with my friends, literally anyone. And like they see that I'm at that restaurant, and they just like hold up to like either fight me or like do anything else that's big. Like that's a dumb idea. Also, I mean, I think the same thing happened to like not with Instamat specifically, but the same thing happened with R&B rock or T&B. But you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, he shared his location on his stories, I believe. Like someone like found him and just he got shot, I believe. No, I think his name is T&B rock, not R&B rock. T&B rock. Yeah, that's yeah, and like that's how pretty much how he got. Ultimately, yeah, just one of those things where yeah, it can be dangerous. But yeah, uh, the point is, yeah, Snapchat's not really that good. But dang, I'll be honest. How do we get to Snapchat? When we talking about TikTok?
Pardon?
Yeah, I said, weren't we like talking about TikTok before?
Yes. The TikTok deal that Trump was saying should happen and is going to happen, that any US operations for TikTok is going to be taken out from the main TikTok infrastructure and is going to be passed down and going to be passed down to be bought by American owners and investors and possibly use those US operations for TikTok and create a, a, a US exclusive equivalent, which the code name is M2.
When Trump? When? That's 2026, 2027, 2028, 2029, 2030?
I think the latest would be 2026.
Okay, I would hope so. Dude, I'll be honest. How old would I be in 2030? I know I'd still be. I think I'd be in my late 20s. Yeah, definitely my late 20s. Okay, actually, yeah. Okay, 22. I'm gonna be 23. Okay. Yeah, I'll be like 28, 23. Wow. Hey, 28, 23. Hopefully Trump can get a deal going on, and hopefully everything goes well. But is there anything else in the news?
Starmer backs UK-wide digital ID to verify right to work and rent.
A digital ID sounds like a horrible idea.
I agree.
And let's hear the rest of the news.
The UK government plans to introduce a digital ID system that will be mandatory for providing the right to work and rent properties. The digital IDs will be held on people's phones and contain information like name, date of birth, nationality, and residency status, and a photo, but carrying it will not be compulsory. While the government says it will improve access to services, some groups like Sinn Féin have criticised the proposal as an attack on the Good Friday Agreement.
Now, what would happen if my phone died and I couldn't show you my ID? and the only thing I had was my physical ID. What sense does that make? Like the least you can do is create a digital card, and maybe we can kind of swipe on other things, but ultimately swipe I don't know, swipe with our photo, with our names, or like the least you can do is that. Like I'll be honest, like why does it have to be on my phone specifically? Like the least you can do is somehow make a futuristic ID pad that we have to carry. That's like a card. I don't know. It's just all around bad idea. I mean, I don't think physical IDs are out of style. I think that they're great. Because like I said, what if my phone dies
Or what
and I
if people
couldn't
don't have
show you?
smartphones to begin with?
Huh? That's a good point. Actually, that's true. What if I don't have a phone, a smartphone to begin with? Then what? Will I be AWOL? Will it no longer exist? No, I don't know. Just complicated. Well, it's not that complicated, but it's just stupid. I don't think there's anything wrong with the IDs that we have now. I'll say if if you want to make a modernized futuristic card, sure, fine, whatever. I wouldn't see the point in that either. But it would be cool, I suppose. But you know, my surroundings to entertain me, other than my phone. What if I left my phone at home?
I would suspect that the UK government would have some kind of digital database that stores all the information for every UK citizen. So even if people don't have any technological devices, there will be a digital fingerprint, a digital print for each UK citizen that will be stored on one of the UK's government's databases. Because if it's going to be a digital ID, then that has to be stored digitally, not just in a physical copy. Because, well, in this day and age, you have to commit to the digital age, no matter what.
Because you're not really gonna be able to do anything, you know. But hey, it's unfortunate, but we're kind of I would say at this moment in time we're kind of forced to adapt to this digital age. Now I feel like certain things don't need to go digital. There are certain old things that don't need to be digital at all. There are certain things that we can still do that could be fun. So I'm not gonna lie. I saw this one video on Instagram probably yesterday, and it was kids from the 1960s saying what would the 2000s be like. And they said they think it would be boring, because we'd have all these, I think one of them said it would be boring because it's we'd have all these machines, doing all this stuff for us. And you know what? They're absolutely right. I mean, I don't know. I feel like the more advanced we became, the more boring life became as well. I mean, look, I understand it's we have to evolve and it's we have to get better, but it's ultimately speaking, it's certain things do not need to be digitalized. I don't know, kind of just sucks the fun. In a way, it does suck the fun out of life. I don't know, including with kids too. There are kids that I, I do wonder how long it's gonna be before they completely get rid of parks, the sprinkler, you know, and just everything that made things fun as a kid, even an adult to a degree. Oh, were you gonna say something?
No, I wasn't going to say anything.
Oh, but yeah, it's sooner or later they're probably gonna just there was this one video we saw a couple months back or last year where there was this McDonald's that completely got rid of the play area in form in trading of a they pretty much traded the fun zone area for tablets for kids. It was kind of sad, really. I don't know. It's we're in a world where it's we're so technologically advanced. It's just boring. There's nothing fun. It's not fun anymore. It's bro, it's I'm an adult, so I'm not gonna be going in the fun zone, but kids, it's with kids, man. It's they gotta have fun. They gotta know exactly and what fun is. And for the most part, I would say this: yeah, being an adult is already not fun. not boring either, but it's not fun. And I feel like it's harder and harder to make things fun as an adult. It's when life sucks sometimes. It does. You know, you gotta find the beauty. You do. And yeah, what we were talking about, yeah, it's a horrible idea.
Yes.
You know, they need to like generally just stop that. It's an idea for crying out loud. Just let me carry my card in peace. But if they're going to do this if they're going to do this digital ID thing, I think it should be optional. You know, for people who want to embrace the future, and I think the people who don't want to embrace the future, or at least embrace the future to a degree, where it's just to a degree, should have physical ID and be able to continue with physical ID up until the next generation. I don't think there needs to be digital ID, especially on your phone. And it's just there are certain things that are just ridiculous about this entire thing. But yeah, what else can you need?
Ukrainian YouTuber arrested in Japan over Fukushima livestream.
Huh, all right, let's hear more about that.
A Ukrainian YouTuber and two other Ukrainian nationals were arrested in Japan for illegally entering an abandoned house in Fukushima and live streaming inside. The area was part of an exclusion zone due to radiation from the 2011 Fukushima nuclear disaster. The incident comes as Japan grapples with concerns over unruly behavior from tourists and a rise in anti-immigration sentiment.
I would say if they knew better than to not go in the house, then yeah, like, you know, obviously an arrested warrant, and I can't really say this, I don't know. I mean, I'll be honest, the fact that they live streamed it too, it's just on yourself. I just wonder how long they're going to spend in prison. Yeah, that's all I can really say about that. Especially if you knew if it was radius, it's even dumber than going in an abandoned house in of itself is something else. It's an abandoned house. But going in a radiated abandoned house,
There should be else. Slovakia passes law to recognize only two sexes and restrict adoption. Slovakia passes law to recognize only two sexes and restrict adoption.
once again, it's like I don't really know why that's a thing to. I don't know why they consider political or a thing to debate. There's always been two genders. And I would say that people who are still afraid to say that in 2025 are just pandering puppets. I'm gonna be honest. Why are you afraid to say that specifically? I mean, I get it. You don't want to alienate your audience, but at the same time, it's just to a certain point where it's like you have to just. Where it's like I'm not gonna say you have to say screw your audience, but you have to just say screw it. Look, this is the truth about life, and hoping your audience are smart enough to like understand that yeah, there's two genders, and like like you just have to have faith that your audience is smart enough. But yeah, let's hear the rest of the article out.
By amending the constitution, the parliament in Bratislava has decided to recognize only two genders. Furthermore, same-sex couples are no longer allowed to adopt children. Critics warn of a conflict with Brussels. Slovakia has passed a constitutional amendment that restricts the rights of trans and non-binary people as well as same-sex couples. The Slovak Republic recognizes only two genders, namely male and female, which are biologically determined. The EU member states' constitution will now state. According to the TASR news agency, 90 members of the National Council in Bratislava voted in favour of the amendment. There were 7 votes against and no abstentions. Left nationalist Prime Minister Robert Fico introduced the constitutional amendment in January. He justified it by arguing that in order to preserve the traditions, the cultural and spiritual heritage of our ancestors, a constitutional barrier against progressive politics had to be built and that common sense had to prevail again. There are two genders, male and female. FICO echoed a statement by US President Donald Trump on the first day of his second term in office. The amendment, which is scheduled to come into force on November 1st, also stipulates that only married couples may adopt children, effectively excluding same-sex couples, as there is no marriage for all in the country. Surrogacy is explicitly prohibited.
Well, I would say, like, it's a good thing that, like, they're not allowed to adopt. We all know how that went with all I know is, like, they were racist. I believe, if I'm wrong, I will apologize for that. Right? But yeah, it's like, I would say this, ultimately speaking, like, I believe, like, a man or raise, if you're like, if you're two women raising one child, that's a bit confusing. If you're two men raising one child, that's a bit confusing as well. I mean, like, look, it's one thing. I mean, like, look, I don't agree with it. Like, be together. If you want to do whatever you want to do, fine. Like, don't involve, like, kids. You already have the right to live. You already have the right to be together. All right, they're like, you used to not even exist back then. Like, man, not even kind of, you literally chose your lifestyle. So it's just, I say, like, it's your fault, like, if you don't have kids. Just live with it. If you wanted a kid, you should get picked out with either a man or a woman. Or actually, no, with women, they can kind of go to sperm banks and kind of do that. Still, you know. And yeah, so I would say, like, yeah, it's a business that they did. Yeah, and, I just want to say that. That's all I really want to say. As for the other thing, well, I pretty much said what I'm saying about the other things, like, earlier on before you reported on the story. So, yeah, all I got to say about that. Is there anything else in the news?
Broadcasters to vote on Israel's participation in Eurovision 2026 after boycott threats.
Is it true? Let's hear more about that.
The European Broadcasting Union, EBU, will hold a vote in November on Israel's participation in the Eurovision Song Contest. Several European broadcasters, including RTE, said they would boycott the contest if Israel took part due to the controversy over Israel's war in Gaza. The EBU has never faced a divisive situation like this before. Well, they have, but they're just not going to talk about it. Regarding Israel's potential exclusion from the Eurovision Song Contest.
What are your thoughts on this specifically?
Well, there are two sides to this coin. On one hand, I am glad that broadcasters that have strong opinions and that do not agree with particular aspects or decisions are now being open, saying we're not taking part. But on the other hand, having to discuss this, it really goes against the principles and the values that this song contest has stood for ever since it began. And actually, when I was on holiday in Austria, there was this other song contest called Intervision, and it sounds quite similar. It's just on a global scale, and Russia was pretty much the brains behind the operation to bring it back, ever since they were excluded from Eurovision because of the war between them and Ukraine. And they've been planning this for years, even a few years before they were even excluded. But since they were excluded from Eurovision because of the war they're going through against Ukraine, they're now more committed to actually bring it back. And as of this recording, September 20th, it was broadcasted live to many viewers around the world, and of course, a lot of news outlets were talking about it, saying Russia's doing this because they're jealous. They're mad they got kicked out of Eurovision, which is true. But also, oh, they want to bring soft power to the world. Now, I'm not sure about that, but I'm not going to deny that's true because I mean, those same people complaining about Intervision would also say the same thing with Israel being in Eurovision. How they're still being, how they're still taking part in Eurovision despite what is going on in Gaza, and still manage to get the votes that Israel has been getting in the last few editions, which they'd be getting much more points than they would usually get before October 7th even happened. So, that's a lot to think about. Like, there are situations that have similar circumstances, but people have very different reactions and opinions regarding those circumstances.
Yeah, definitely, people will have their, different reactions and different opinions. We just have to simply wait and see what's wrong. Hopefully, we can get it. So the truth will eventually come out. But ultimately, we truly don't really. We know, the surface level stuff, but we don't really know what's going on. So it's just best to, leave it in, the hands, leave it in, God's hands, and, all will be revealed, in later days. Yeah, yeah, I'll say, for the most part, but we just have to wait and see. Yeah, is there anything else in here?
Official networks of the Argentine Federal Police hacked to promote a cryptocurrency.
Okay, let's hear more.
Indeed, we shall. Where do I go from here? The Argentine Federal Police confirmed this Friday that its official account on the social network Twitter X was hacked to promote a cryptocurrency called Mira, which raised concerns about the scope of the breach and the security of information in state agencies. For a few minutes, followers of the account were able to see posts in English promoting a supposed airdrop event aimed at attracting users involved in digital commerce. Argentine Federal Police, Mirror Network, Big Mirror airdrop event is here. Join traders, stakers, and NFT holders. Limited rewards available. Claim now, read one of the messages that quickly went viral. The force's response was immediate. According to the PFA itself, cybersecurity protocols were activated, and the specialized technical department intervened to regain full control of the official account. Within a few hours, all the fraudulent posts were deleted, although screenshots circulated widely on various social networks, rekindling the debate about the ability of state agencies to protect their digital communication systems against increasingly sophisticated attacks.
Well, it's very unfortunate that, think something that someone had to get hacked in order to promote a scam coin, but, you know, I'm definitely glad that, everything is better now, because ultimately speaking, it's just one of those things that, people are going to continue to fall for. I'll be honest, how these people continue to fall for, these coins like this and just think that it's going to be legit? Do they think that, there's just coins and, invest in the coin for probably, a couple of minutes and, pull out as soon as they made, a little bit of money? Is that it?
That's one aspect. However, I think there are other motives and or reasons why people create cryptocurrencies to begin with. Because firstly, crypto in general is essentially a decentralized monetary currency that is decentralized, connected to the blockchain, which is essentially a public record of every cryptocurrency transaction ever, so people can keep track of who's been sending crypto to which person, or agency, or organization, whatever you want to call it. And I think when people do create cryptocurrencies, and I don't have too much knowledge on crypto as a whole, but I know that when you're creating a currency, digital or physical, there has to be a certain supply. The quantity of how many of that said currency there is available. And then depending on the high demand for said currency, the value for each individual piece of a currency will go up if the demand is high. If demand is low, but with so much supply, then the value for each piece of currency will drop to literal pennies. And you can't just create cryptocurrency just to make a quick buck. There has to be a system of which how cryptocurrencies are generated. With Bitcoin, this is I'm not sure how to describe how Bitcoin gets mined, but as simple as I can put it, Bitcoin is mined by completing a very long, complicated math problem. And by completing said math problem, you can receive 1 Bitcoin. At least that was the case when it first started. Every 4 years, the amount of Bitcoin you will receive for every complicated math question you complete gets halved, until eventually the amount of Bitcoin you receive for every math equation you complete is way below the decimal point. And the thing is, there is a very limited supply for each individual Bitcoin. But yet, with the complicated math problem system of how Bitcoin is mined, and the 4 years, every 4 year Bitcoin halving happens, those are the few factors on how and why Bitcoin is increasing in value. So the point I'm making is, if anyone's going to make a cryptocurrency, there has to be a specific number on supply of each individual piece of cryptocurrency, and there has to be a method of which that said cryptocurrency could be and should be mined. And also the method of proof of work, proof of protocol, or I'm not sure how to describe it, but at least some kind of protocol associated with said cryptocurrency. Like, if you look at governments around the world, when they print money of their own currency, they think by printing lots of money, they'll have enough money to pay off their debts and whatever expenses they have to pay to their departments. This only works if people do not know how much money that a government prints its own money, and as well as how many, and especially if people are not printing money at the same rate as they are, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think I get it all around. I think I get it like from all around. I think I understand what you're trying to say. And I will say this, yeah. I guess the main point is, yeah, people make crypto, people launch a coin for money. I would just assume that they're just money hungry or simply broke. You know, they're thinking they can get as the kids say, a quick lick from from somewhere, something, or someone, then they will do that. Now, this is a money-driven world. People emphasize money, 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 money over everything, and they're willing to trade their morals, to trade what they believe in, specifically for the vengeance, or for the Abe Lincoln, for the George Washington. I don't know. For anything that is paper thinner. But the point is, yeah, people are switch up as soon as enough money is in front of their face. People would probably do something that goes against their values and morals just for that money, just for that. And ultimately speaking, yeah, it's ultimately about it's all about the money at the end of the day. The people and and people who think they can finesse the system by investing in that coin and then ultimately getting scammed, then they get mad about it. People who genuinely fall for that, yeah, they get mad. I'll be honest, I would be less mad at the person who scammed me and more mad at myself if I fell for it. Does that make more sense? Like, I don't know. It's one thing if it's a trustworthy person who scams me, then yeah, I'd probably be mad at that person, but also still myself for falling for it. But I don't know. It's like if I fell for something, then that's on me. That's really on me. Hey, is there anything else in the news?
Yes. Germany says Russian satellites are shadowing military links, unveils €35 billion space defense plan.
Interesting. Let's hear more.
Germany's defense minister has warned his country's satellites are being shadowed by Russian satellites. Boris Pistorius cited concerns over two Lush/Olymp satellites, Intelsat satellites used by German armed forces and others. He told a Berlin space conference, Russia and China have expanded their capabilities for warfare in space rapidly over the past years. They can disrupt satellite operations, blind satellites, manipulate or kinetically destroy them. He said Germany's military had already been targeted by jamming attacks. Intelsat is a US-Luxembourg firm operating more than 50 satellites using used by private companies as well as government agencies. The two Russian satellites in question, launched in 2014 and 2023, have been accused of loitering and eavesdropping on others by stopping nearby. French space startup Aldoria said it observed one Russian satellite performing a sudden close approach to another one in May 2024. The year before, US firm Slingshot Aerospace reported unfriendly behavior, with one of the satellites showing a pattern in which it was stopping near non-Russian satellites. Geostationary satellites rarely move and usually spend years in the same position. The warning comes amid speculation that Russia might be behind drones that have disrupted several airports in Denmark this week.
Huh. I will say this. Definitely, very specific stuff. Definitely, I would say pretty much that story explained everything. I don't really have to say much. It's just an all around mess. I mean, it's just an all around mess, and I just hope that no a war doesn't break out about it, or I hope that no fighting comes from it, because ultimately speaking, it's just one of those things where you just hope that there are not too many hard feelings, because ultimately speaking, yeah, it's just one of those things where you have to just hope and pray that nothing bad happens from it. Because, yeah, there's not really much to say about it. There's not really much to say about it, and yeah, what can I say about that? Anything else in the news?
British Columbia Green Party elects Emily Lowen as new leader.
All right, let's hear more about that.
On September 24th, 2025, the British Columbia Green Party elected a young climate advocate as its new leader with a strong majority. Lowen's win came after a period of uncertainty for the party, following Sonia Fustino's defeat in her re-election bid in her subsequent resignation earlier in 2025. Lowen campaigned on change by recruiting young members, demanding stronger climate action, increased taxes on the wealthy, and a moratorium on fossil fuel extraction. She received 3,189 votes, more than twice those of runner-up Jonathan Kerr, and stated, "That is a force to reckon with." describing the energized party base. Lowen committed to turning the Greens into a strong and outspoken opposition force, while also indicating she might revisit the cooperation agreement with the governing NDP, marking a political change in strategy.
Do you have any initial thoughts on this?
Yes, so actually, no, I don't have any strong opinions on this, but I know Risk would.
The thing is, I really don't have that many strong opinions on this. Yeah, no, Chris definitely would have more to say about this than anyone in the world. Me, you, probably the president, but yeah, I would say Rick would have more to say. Uh, shall we move on? Is there anything else in the news?
Let's see. Hong Kong lawmakers passed bill to ban substandard tiny apartments.
Huh? You said a tiny bill?
Oh,
Is that
apparently.
what you said?
No, the headline reads Hong Kong lawmakers passed bill to ban substandard tiny apartments.
So standard tiny apartment. Why do we need a bill for that specifically? That actually piques my interest.
Hong Kong lawmakers have passed legislation requiring subdivided flats to meet minimum standards, including a minimum size of 86 square feet and proper windows. Landlords will be able to register their subdivided flats from March 2024 and will have until February 2030 to bring them into compliance. Violations could lead to fines up to $38,500 and 3 years imprisonment, along with daily fines for ongoing offences.
All the things you could have possibly passed. Why is tiny apartments your concern? Out of all the things you could have passed to ban anything, you chose tiny apartments. I mean, they really could have done anything. Apparently, tiny apartments is the biggest problem that's facing South Korea. But yeah, in all seriousness, though, like, they really could have just done that. They really could have just passed it. So, tiny apartments is a problem facing this country.
Oh, yes, it's a serious problem.
Seriously, this is the biggest problem.
Video game giant Electronic Arts, or EA for short, nearly roughly $50 billion deal to go private, Wall Street Journal reports.
All right, let's hear more about this.
Oh yes, let me just recheck the cookies. Electronic Arts rallied on Friday following a report by the Wall Street Journal that the video game company is nearing a roughly $50 billion deal to go private. The deal would likely be the largest leverage buyout of all time, according to the journal. Investors, including Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund and Silver Lake, could announce the deal as soon as next week, the report said. Shares of Electronic Arts jumped 15% on Friday following a report in the Wall Street Journal that the video game company is nearing a roughly $50 billion deal to go private. Investors, including Saudi Arabia, Public Investment Fund, and Silver Lake, could announce the deal as soon as next week, the report said. The deal would be the largest leveraged buyout in Wall Street history, surpassing the agreement to take TXU Energy private for about 45, or was it $4.5 billion in 2007. A leveraged buyout, LBO, is when debt is predominantly used for an acquisition, a tactic traditionally used by private equity firms or activists. EA makes popular video games including The Sims, Madden NFL, the soccer football game FC, formerly known as FIFA. With Friday's games, the stock is up 32% for the year. EA did not immediately respond to CNBC's request for comment.
I hope it's a good thing. Yeah, I really don't have a strong of an opinion about this. Do you have any strong opinions about this? Or like, just borderline opinion?
I think EA are a bunch of greedy melons.
Yeah, that's true also. Honestly, yeah, like the greed runs the world. I mean, Yeah, I guess I just didn't have much to say right now. I'm not really that surprised. I mean, obviously, things are gonna happen. But ultimately speaking, I just hope things go well in the end. Things can be resolved in a less greedy, more just common sense way. But yeah, I would say yeah. I mean, other than greedy, what else would you say in general?
Well, in regards to the deal for EA to go private, I hope it's worth it. Because if it's not, they're going down a very, very smelly rabbit hole. And they will learn the hard way. Maybe. However, I know one thing's for certain. If a company goes private, this prevents that company in question to have any other outside influence to have a say or vote on that company's future. I didn't think EA would go down that rabbit hole because I thought I thought each money, and no matter how many people criticize their decisions to put a bunch of DLCs and add-ons and make people pay tens of dollars to get those DLCs for every game that they produce, that they're good. They don't have to worry. But hearing about EA going private gives me the impression that they're not good. They are worried that their future is in hot water. So, knowing that, I'm not surprised. That does not mean, however, that EA will be safe forever. They will learn the hard way, and karma will bite them in the bum. That's for sure.
Yeah, for the most part, usually things don't go well for people who do that. Really, only God will know, what will happen to them. But ultimately speaking, until then, all we can do is really wait and see what happens next. Yeah, injustice seems to be the main factor of, this world, of this current world right now. So in certain areas, there seems to be no justice, and in other areas, there's still some form of justice. But yeah, is there anything else in here?
That is us. Peace.